happy Wednesday, February 1st. I always like getting to February. February always feels just a little bit better than January. So I felt happy this morning when it was the 1st of February. My name's Anita Parker. I'm one of the educational developers at the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I see some familiar names and some not too familiar names. So know that myself and my colleagues here at CTL are happy to get to know you, to meet with you, to hear about your teaching needs at any time that you would like to get a hold of us. All right, so today's webinette is called the Multitasking of Hybrid Teaching, How to Integrate In-Person and Remote Students at the Same Time. I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes or so, because the purpose of the webinette is to create a succinct video that then goes onto our website as a resource. Afterwards, we'll have a QA and sharing where we can spend some time and you can tell me about what you're up to, share what you're up to, ask any questions that I might be able to help you out with. So before we get going, I want to share with you what you'll find on our banner today and probably for the next little while at ctl.ualberta.ca. We have an annual instructor survey. You just click on that Contribute Now button there, and it'll take you to a survey that we have so that we can see what your needs are, and that helps inform our programming, our resources, etc. So ctl.ualberta.ca is what you would type into your browser, or if you just search CTL in the U Alberta search engine search field, you'll get it there as well. Okay, so today's webinette, I have three hopes that I hope we get done by the end of the webinette. I'm going to list a big long list of things that instructors need to do in the moment, before, during, and at the end of a hybrid class. I'm hoping to kind of overwhelm you with, wow, we do a lot. And then the second bullet, but then how can we do this better? How can we make this not overwhelming? What are some strategies that will work? And then the third bullet again is there that let's chat afterwards. I put a bit.ly there that you can write it down, or when you watch the video later, the bit.ly will be there for you. It's basically my speaking notes in article form. So if you're looking to have it as a resource later, that's where you can find it. All right, here we go. So hybrid teaching at the University of Alberta is what you see here. It's the instructor in a physical classroom, physically in the presence with physical students who are in this brick and mortar place as well. But then there is also a group of remote students that are attending that same class simultaneously, and the instructor is teaching to both groups at the same time. So for an instructor, hybrid teaching requires multitasking, and it's really not unlike the work of an orchestra conductor, or sometimes we say air traffic control, or whatever your metaphor might be. But I like orchestra conductor because the role of a conductor is to coordinate many moving parts in the right order at the right time to create a positive outcome for everyone. So in this webinette, we're going to take inventory of the many tasks that an instructor needs to do concurrently with physical students and remote students at the same time, and we'll consider some strategies. Let's start with this. Physiologically, the brain is not great at multitasking. If we think we're doing more than one thing at a time, our brain is likely just switching back and forth between tasks, and we are likely doing a subpar job at both of them. Or because there's two hemispheres to the brain, we can do two things at once, like folding laundry and watching TV. But the moment we try to bring in a third task, something gets dropped along the way. So in other words, multitasking is arguably ineffective, and it can be quite exhausting as well. However, we know that orchestra conductors do create magnificent performances for audiences, and we know that instructors are doing a fantastic job of teaching hybrid, of teaching remote students and in-person students at the same time. Teaching hybrid is a sensory motor skill. Sensory because we receive stimuli from the environment. It makes its way to our brain. Motor, because our brain makes some decisions and then sends instructions to our muscles to tell them what to do. And we have about 600 muscles in the human body. And oh my goodness, when you're in a classroom with two groups of students at the same time, you're using about 600 muscles to do that. And it's a skill because, like any other skill, we get better at it with practice. So here are some of the things that an instructor does before class. Before class, the instructor arrives at the physical classroom and implements their get class started list. I'll tell you about that shortly. The instructor sets up hardware and software. This could be a laptop, camera, microphone, tablet, stylus, phone, and probably a lot of cords as well. Software, you've got your e-class, your Zoom, your perhaps a number of other tools like your PowerPoint or your Google collaboration tools, etc. Everything that you use software-wise needs to have a username and a password that you have to log into. And once the instructor is ready, the instructor greets students as they arrive physically and virtually. That's before class. During class, the instructor implements Plan A. They expertly click through all these different software applications, likely shares a few screens, maybe sets up some breakout rooms, launches some polls, and gets students into collaborative digital spaces. Maybe the instructor writes on a digital whiteboard, and this all happens while the instructor is lecturing, facilitating discussion, debriefing activities, speaking about course logistics and assessments. And of course, the instructor needs to maintain eye contact with the physical and virtual students at the same time. That's during class. A little bit. During class, continued. The instructor somehow is able to circulate the physical room and the Zoom breakout rooms while students are working in groups, maybe eavesdropping, hearing what students are saying to each other, helping them stay on track or getting them back on track if they've got off track. The instructor is likely having to do some troubleshooting with technology along the way. Maybe the instructor has to toss Plan A out the window and operationalize Plan B if there is a Plan B to be had. At the end of class, the instructor wishes the students a nice day as they leave the physical and virtual space and sticks around for any questions that the students might have. So you can see there is a lot, and if you're feeling a little tired at the end of a hybrid class, this might be why. So that's the multitasking situation. What are some possible strategies? I put them into 4 categories for us today. Plan ahead, be consistent, manage expectations and slow down, and practice. Let's go one at a time. Planning ahead, having a robust Plan A and a flexible Plan B includes your instructional strategies, your technological strategies, your resources. You really do want to leave little to nothing to chance, because when you try to teach impromptu in a hybrid class without preparing, at best it might feel kind of disjointed and not much gets accomplished, or not what you hope gets accomplished. And at worst, it can be a technical failure. If you're not as planned as you need to be, you can really have a hyper focus on technology and troubleshooting, and then that distracts from your well-intended teaching. Even if nothing goes as planned, you toss that Plan A, and maybe you have to toss Plan B out the window, you still have built some digital resources for students that are still available for them on eClass. So 100% ready means you have a minute-by-minute lesson plan. You have your teaching materials on eClass. What can your students do? How can your students be prepared for class as well, so that in-class time is maximized? When you're planning, plan with online in mind first, the online delivery in mind first, because it's easier to plan for the remote students and integrate the in-person students rather than the other way around. Plan for simplicity. Be nice to yourself, especially at the beginning of a semester. If this is your first time teaching hybrid, maybe you are starting with some one-way lecturing and some small active learning tasks. And you'll find that maybe you get a bit more daring and innovative with active learning tasks and digital tools as your hybrid teaching skills improve over time. And a get class started list. This is everything on paper, handwritten, or maybe you like to type it out, the things you need to plug in, turn on, open up, say out loud, move around, click on. So when students arrive, you're ready to go. My get class started list when I was teaching hybrid, I was just amazed. It had 23 items on it, and it really did have plug-in webcam. It really put absolutely everything I needed to do to get my class started. I looked at it the first class, the second class, maybe the third class. I didn't look at it anymore after that. It was all up here. Those neurological pathways were already made, but there was a lot of comfort in having it written down. Let's move on to the next strategy, the be consistent. Consistent in your unfolding of a lesson plan and being consistent in your class routines, because again, teaching hybrid is a sensory motor skill, and development of any kind of skill requires repetition of the same movements so the brain is able to establish those neuromuscular pathways. And eventually it almost becomes automatic. Even if you take a break over the summer or a semester, when you come back after a break, you have that get class started list to fall back on. Consistency throughout a term lets students know what is expected of them, and it lets students know what they can expect from you. Think of consistency as providing this stable foundation. So if you do try something different and innovative, it's more likely to work out. And if it doesn't work out, it's not as big of a deal. Number 3 of 4, manage expectations and slow down. Teaching hybrid takes more time than traditional in-person teaching for just about everything. It just does. It takes time to make sure that the in-person students and the remote students, that they're seeing, hearing, doing what you intended in your planning. It takes time to introduce an activity, give instructions, for students to move into their groups, especially if you're mixing up the groups with the in-person and remote students, for them to settle into their task, and then to bring everyone back together and to debrief. So you want to be realistic about what can be accomplished for each class and to allow yourself the time for those transitions. Communicate to students that this is okay, that this is just simply the reality of hybrid gatherings. Your class is a hybrid gathering. They're going to have other classes that are hybrid gatherings, and there's a pretty good chance they're going to find themselves in the workplace collaborating with team members in a hybrid gathering. So there's a bit of a hidden curriculum here if you're helping students manage expectations. You're all managing your expectations and you're all slowing down. Again, keep it simple, avoiding unnecessary complexity, and maybe having a bit of a mantra going through your mind of sometimes good enough is good enough. Be nice to yourself. And the last one, practice. If you think of hybrid teaching as like a performance, like any artistic or athletic performance, practice is essential. Before the semester begins, get into your classroom. Bring a colleague or two with laptops. Send one colleague into the hall to be the remote student. Keep another colleague in the classroom to be the in-person student, and really play around with how everything technology-wise is going to happen. And here's where you'll refine that get class started list. You'll get plenty of practice class by class once the semester begins. But if you are going to try something new in the middle of the semester, get those colleagues back with you into your classroom to play around with it again. And one little side note, this is a common question that I find myself discussing with instructors is, do in-person students need laptops? Technically, no. In-person students don't need a laptop. They don't need to be logged into Zoom during the call. The only one that truly needs to is the instructor. And maybe this is the reality of large classes, limited bandwidth. But for a richer experience for everyone, again, especially in a smaller class, for heightened social presence and engagement, to be able to integrate the in-person students and the remote student group during active learning activities, it is nice when the in-person students do have some kind of device and they're logged into Zoom as well. That is what I have for you today. Do you have any questions for me that I might be able to answer? Or how are you doing? What would you like to share about how your multitasking skill building is going in your hybrid classrooms? I'm happy to stick around as long as you'd like to chat, but that is the end of our formal presentation. So you're also welcome to log off and catch the video in a week or two when it gets up onto our CTL website.